Well, we're going to focus on something that impacts a lot of you, the job market, specifically India's IT sector and how it could take a huge hit with around 200,000 jobs at stake. Well, let's take a look at some of the companies that are laying off employees, especially in the field of IT. Cognizant is the worst hit with as many as 6,000 layoffs, about 3% of its workforce. Cognizant is reportedly struggling with new technologies, digital services, and redundant lower jobs that are now automated. Tech Mahindra has let go of more than 1,000 employees this month alone. With rumors of Flipkart's acquisition, Snapdeal plans to axe 30% of its workforce as a result of poor growth and reduced revenue, impacting more than 1,000 employees as well. IT giant Wipro also plans to trim the fat and get rid of some project leaders thanks to the result of automation. DxO Technology plans to halve the number of offices in India and lay off around 10,000 people over the next 3 years. And IT giant Infosys plans to chop 1,000 jobs, mostly project manager positions as well as senior architects. Now, all of this could also be attributed possibly as a result of U.S. President Donald Trump's policies, as many IT firms are now choosing to hire U.S. citizens and asking H-1B visa holders to return to India instead.
Are they not reaching their quota? Have they recruited more than what is supposed to be working in an organization? So multiple factors, right? So it's a management decision which they have taken. But I mean, it completely depends on, it's going to throw a massive pressure on a lot of people.
Problem lies in, in both the segments. The one is the people who are completing the studies without skills, and the second one are the companies who are hiring without, evaluating them right at the first step.
Part of the process, right? I mean, the companies will have projects, and based on that, they'll hire, recruit people. The project gets over, they start laying off. So that's their process. So that will continue to happen. The layoffs have been happening and it will continue to happen. That's the harsh truth of this industry that we are in.
All right, to get perspective on this story, we're joined by Sanjeev Ahluwalia, advisor and observer for Research Foundation here in the studio in New Delhi. We also will later be joined by Chaitanya Mudunuri, the co-founder and CEO of Array BizTech from Hyderabad, and our Chennai correspondent, Revati Rajivan, from the ground there. Let me first start with our guest here in the studio. Thank you so much for joining us. The first question is, why now? Why are so many IT companies facing that brunt, facing so many job cuts and trimming the fat?
Archit, let's look at the light at the end of the tunnel first. The fact that there are layoffs is actually a good thing. I mean, it's very traumatic for the people involved, naturally. But if you look at what it means for the industry, and if you look at what it means for the credibility of the Indian regulatory system,
right?
I think what it's telling international investors is that, listen, Indian labor markets are liquid. You hire people, we have lots of people who are available, and then if business requirements are not there, you can let them go, and they do actually go. And this is a very sort of a natural process in any kind of a consultancy or as one guest was saying, or your reporter was saying, in a project-based type of organization. But clearly, this is not just a normal layoff syndrome, because there are reports that over the last, in fact, I think the government spokesperson came out with a statement that over the last 2.5 years, the IT industry has added incrementally about 200,000 or 300,000 jobs. And now, we're kind of letting go of almost a similar amount in the first year, and maybe
so it seems a little
amounts.
ironic to see that number.
So, well, I mean, it's ironic because, everyone knows that the business opportunity was in supplying good quality labor at very affordable rates. And because there are now, and it was all done under the open economy neoliberal system that the world had bought into and India bought into in 1991.
Right.
But we find today that things have changed. That because there is a downturn in the countries that spawned the neoliberal philosophy, they are now battening down the hatches and putting up barriers. So as a result, India has to think anew. And I'm pretty sure that the government will think anew, our companies will think anew, and we would be able to redeploy people who have been laid off from these overseas project-oriented areas into the domestic economy. Don't forget that there is a huge push in the digital area. Government is coming online. Tax systems are being improved. And so all this really means that for a IT resource personnel or a person who's interested in IT, there are going to be a lot of opportunities.
Just perhaps new opportunities.
New opportunities, but I think the person has to be willing to look beyond, you know, just getting a job and going overseas and coming back after 1 year.
Absolutely. All right.
So there is some adjustment to be done on both sides. Overall, good for the companies because they're being able to protect their bottom line. Some companies have not laid off anybody at all. I believe the Tatas, for instance, and I have no hesitation in mentioning them, they have not laid anybody off. So it's not like everybody's throwing people out.
Right.
Those who have a strong revenue model, who have thought these things through, who have a strong culture of supporting their employees, who have a strong culture of matching their revenue stream with, you know, employee requirements, they will do okay. Those who have not done that, who've been very short-sighted, well, their employees will suffer.
Right.
But hey, that happens in many other industries.
In many industries as well, not just IT.
Nothing new, including media.
Absolutely, absolutely. Let's now go to our correspondent in Chennai, Revathi Rajivan, standing by. Revathi, you know, you've been there on the ground talking to people. You know, Chennai is certainly one of the big IT sectors here in India. You know, many of the IT companies are denying this, but what are some of the short-term and long-term impacts of these layoffs and job cuts? Revathi?
Well, Akshat, yes, I have been talking to these employees who have been asked to resign or who have already resigned as the management has asked them to do. But two concerns here that I have come across that is common to all these employees. One, that there has not been any written communication that has been given to these employees, either you know, as a hard copy or an email that is sent to these employees. Those that I've been talking to have told me that they were personally called by the HR one by one and were asked to voluntarily submit their resignation. So there is no really written evidence that they can actually furnish against the company saying that they have been asked to resign voluntarily and illegally against the policies of the company. That is one. Two, most of these employees that I have been speaking to are those with about say 10 to 12 years of experience, which means that they are perhaps settling down in their lives, settling down with their career. So at this point they are perhaps thinking that okay, I have a job in hand and that's something that's secure, and they're not perhaps thinking of moving. Perhaps they have family back home and several factors like that. So these kind of employees are most affected. So for them, switching jobs at this point of time, how possible it is, and whether other companies would be willing to hire these many people with this experience, or would they go for freshers whom they would want to hire and groom from the beginning and absorb into their company. That is a concern. So these two concerns are what I have been observing amongst these employees. But as far as Chennai is concerned, one of the companies have responded, have met the Labour Commissioner, where a hearing is going on at the moment, and they've asked for 1 week's time to respond to this issue. But primarily, they have denied that there is any sort of mass layoffs that are happening in these companies. They have pointed out, they have said and defended their side that these are all only individual cases. Now, there are on one side these many employees who are saying that they've been asked to voluntarily resign, but with no written evidence of that. And on the other side, the company is denying it completely, saying that these are individual cases, actually.
All right, Revathi, we'll come back to you in just a second. Let me now go over to Chaitanya Mudunuri, co-founder for Ray BizTech from Hyderabad, joining us. Good evening to you. My question to you is the impacts, the implications of these. Is this something that people who are perhaps looking at going into IT should be concerned about? And, you know, some of the younger folks are perhaps looking to carve out a career. Is this perhaps a bad time to be in that industry?
Hey, Archit. Good to be on the show. There is a cause for concern right now in terms of what's happening. But then again, as Sanjeev said, it is not all bad. It is actually good news because it actually forces us to look at our education, what's happening with education, and how we can skill existing developers and other engineers. there have been a lot of like training happening. IT is a knowledge-based industry, and IT associates are all knowledge workers. There is a constant training happening. There are some macro factors that we talk about in terms of external factors like visa situation or latest technologies happening. But we have a strong knowledge base in India, and if the people can be skilled again, I don't see any reason why we should do this.
All right. Well, let's get some more clarity on this. It seems like at this point there really is no light at the end of the tunnel for many of the IT bigwigs here in India, and perhaps even some of the IT companies outside. Once India, the poster boy, really many people would think about IT jobs, and they would say, India, the hub for outsourcing. But as we mentioned, the IT sector likely to face more headwinds in the coming months. So what exactly are the challenges? Who's going to be impacted? And is there a plan in place in case more and more jobs are going to be cut from the IT sector? Well, let's take a look at this report.
IT companies across the world are gearing up for a big challenge ahead. With multiple issues before these mega enterprises, a report by McKinsey predicts a global job cut of over 2 lakh jobs per year for the next 2 to 3 years. And the worst hit could be the Indian workforce. Large-scale cutoffs are already common, with companies pushing almost 1 to 2% of their workforce out, owing to poor performance last year. But the staggering layoff predictions are a cause of worry for those employed in this sector.
You have 2 options. One is like you can resign today and you get a 4 months salary. Otherwise, you have a 2 months notice period. So it's your option. You need to resign. You need to decide. So they gave me a day and asked me to decide. They asked me to resign on myself. So like there was no mails or no written formats or nothing. There is no official documents at all. And they also said like in our background check or documents, it will be like voluntarily you resign.
The mismatch in skill set and market requirements, the glaring need to reskill the existing workforce, and the need to create more jobs in the United States and Europe are some of the reasons for these job cuts.
In this cognition mass termination, more than 25,000 people got MS rating, actually 4th packet rating in the annual performance appraisal. So every day they are getting call from the HR to give the forceful resignation letter. So far I think more than 3,000 people got affected, like directly they were asked to put the paper. But I think in the downtime, another one or 2 months, it will be more than 20,000 people going to get affected by cognition termination.
While the companies remain tight-lipped over the issue of handing out pink slips, the report predicts difficult times ahead for the IT industry. It remains to be seen if the government will step in to safeguard the interests of those employed in India. Bureau Report, WION.
Well, we're joined now by Chris Lakshmikant, the Managing Director of Headhunters, a recruitment consulting company from Chennai. Thanks for joining us. How much should India, especially with regard to the IT industry, be concerned about this latest find?
It is not a question of India. It is a question of people who are in this industry. Because in the Indian economy is overall doing very well. There will be jobs coming up in other sectors. Finally, for instance, you take infrastructure sector, it is doing extremely well because of the government focusing on that. In the IT sector, what is happening is that there is a quantum change. It is not, you cannot compare this and say what happened last year and the previous year. Automation is the most important change which has happened in the sector. Because of automation, not only in the sector, but in banking, you name it, everywhere, automation is going to create, destroy jobs. Let us face it. According to the study made by World Bank and then Cambridge University, about 60% of the jobs, as you and I know, in India will disappear in the next 5 years. So it is going to be a difficult thing. We all have to come to realize it is going to happen.
All right, let me now go to Chaitanya next, who's standing by. Chaitanya, what type of employees in IT firms are going to be impacted with this? Is it just the top-level positions? And if you are someone who's in the IT industry, what are some of the other options that those people could have in case they're unfortunately out of a job? Chaitanya.
Sure, Chip. There is a big hype about 2 lakh employees getting getting laid off. But if you look at total number of jobs in IT industry in India, there are about 40 lakh, and it's only 5% of the total workforce. And what's happening is most of the times this workforce that is the so-called layoffs are happening either at that mid or top level where there is mid-level management, and because of optimizations, there is not enough people to be managed there, and there is a leave that they're asking for. The second thing that we need to look at is lower level or engineers who are skilled. I don't see any reason for them to be worried. We are hiring, and similarly, there are a lot of companies I know are actually hiring. Despite the visa issue that people talk about, the pipelines are strong. We have a strong pipeline from the US itself. But as you, if you look at this industrial revolution per se is actually happening in IT now in terms of automation or in terms of what's happening. See, any routine jobs or any job that can be well defined is going to be automated, and the person doing it has to move into a different skill set. When it happened in the early 1900s, the people who were working in the textile industries, they actually learned how to run those machines, how to maintain those machines. Similarly, what's going to happen is when the big data or this automation or artificial intelligence kind of technologies are going to take over, you still need people who can understand how these systems work and how to configure them, feed data to them, work with them. So there are opportunities in terms of analytics, data science, automation, all over the place.
All right.
And,
all right, let me go to Sanjeev next with regards to that. Sanjeev, my question to you is, as we just talked about, perhaps it's a new skill set that we address. It's not just executives, sometimes even fresh grads who really aren't up to the mark, who may be losing out. But if someone is in the IT industry, are there things that they should perhaps start brushing up their skill sets on? Cloud computing, big data, other skill sets that are more hot in the IT industry now that perhaps were not a decade ago, things that are now more obsolete because of other inventions.
Look, I think if I may make 3 very short points.
Absolutely.
Number one, I'm dismayed by the fact that industry seems to be in denial about the fact that there's a problem. This is never a good sign. It's not industry's fault. So why is industry always apologizing for letting people go? It's a very normal and natural things that happen, except in the best case companies, which I mentioned one of them. So I think we should get real. There is a problem. I think we have to face it squarely. NASSCOM has to face it, industry has to face it, and the government has to face it.
Absolutely.
And solutions can be found. But if you're always in denial, no solutions will be found.
But what about the specific skills?
So on the specifics, look, if you're a technology worker, you are trying to discover the technology frontier even when you have a job and even when you're working on your present job.
Sure.
Right? And if you're not in that league of going to the next step continually, then you need to suffer. You should go into, healthcare, or you should go into, a human-related business.
What about automation? I'm actually getting a live Instagram viewer saying automation is a great place to be. Shamini saying that's a good, part of that to be. What are your thoughts?
Automation is the biggest killer for jobs. Automation is not just IT jobs. Automation is going to kill off lawyers. It's going to kill off chartered accountants.
But won't people always need, they always will need IT, right? Or is it sort of now perhaps not as much of a need as it was a decade ago?
No, in India, if you look at India, see, there is an enormous public sector out there that has barely scratched the surface of IT. We are not a IT-enabled public sector, and I include banks and the PSUs and everybody in that.
All right.
And we have the small-scale industry and the small businessman, which has not even, entered into that area yet. So the enormous capability. So there is a, as C.K. Prahlad used to say, right? There's a huge fortune at the bottom of the pyramid. IT, unfortunately, has always scratched the dollars at the top.
Right.
They have to get real and get their hands dirty. It's there.
All right. Unfortunately, we are out of time, but certainly an engaging discussion from all of our guests. The IT sector in India hit hard with many jobs at stake. We'd like to take a moment to thank all of our guests at this point. Revathi joining us from Chennai, of course, Sanjeev and Chaitanya, as well as Chris from Hyderabad. Thank you all so much for your input and insights. And that does it for this edition of WION World is One News. I'm Archit Seshadri. Thanks so much for joining us. Have a good night.